Everybody has been wondering what makes Wizkid's music so hypnotic. Is it the groovy rhythms, the emotional chords, or the way every single note just feels so effortless? Today, we're going to be breaking it all down. Wizkid is not just one of the biggest afrobeat stars, he is a global phenomenon, from Grammy nominations to chart-topping hits like Essence. With his new album Morayo making waves, now is the perfect time to explore what makes his production style so special. We are going to dive into the key elements of Wizkid's style of music, plus I'll show you how the producers like P2J and Priime help bring Wizkid's ideas to life. So without wasting so much of your time, let's get to today's video. So to kick this off for the melody, if you listen to a lot of Wizkid songs, you would know that the melody usually uses an E-piano or a guitar melody, but for this I decided to use a grand piano. If you listen to Soji on the album, you hear how Priime uses the piano to create a very melodic, jazzy sounding chord progression. So I knew I already had to get a piano VST, so I opened up Analog Lab, I went to the piano section and I used the Japanese Jazz Studio grand piano presets, and then I laid down this chord progression. So if you want to know how I came up with this chord progression, it's not that complex, so I'm going to show you how exactly I came up with this. So the very first thing I did was to set my root notes and my scale. So I went to this drop down menu right here, I went to view, I went to scale highlighting, and I set my root note to D sharp and then my scale to the minor natural. The first thing I did was just to lay down a simple triad chord like this, a D sharp minor triad chord, and then I took this down an octave and then added a note like this and one over down like this. But then I'm going to bring this down an octave, and then I added one more note at the bottom just to add more depth, and then I'm going to bring this down an octave also. So what I did next was to strum the notes, strum this, and then I also strum this. But then I'm going to change this up from a B to an A sharp, and then I'm also going to add a note like this, which is an A sharp. Take this up an octave like this, then I'm going to add a note like this, and then I'm also going to shorten this, add a note here like this. So now we have gotten our first chord progression. I'm going to just copy this over to show you how you can then come up with your next chord progression after you've gotten your first one. So I'm going to use Ctrl B, just copy this over. As you can see, I already have my scale highlighted, which are all these highlighted notes apart from the dark colored notes. So basically you're just going to make use of your scale. So what I'm going to do is to bring this down to a G sharp and then bring this down to a G sharp. So I'm going to do the same thing for all of that. Bring this here, bring this down, and then the top notes are still going to remain the way they are, but then I'm going to shorten everything, shorten it like this, and then I'm also going to add this note over here like this, and then I'm going to copy this over like I did before, and then I'm also going to do the same thing, add this note over here like this. And in order to complete the warm jazzy vibe, I needed to add some tension, so I took this up to an A sharp, took this up as well, and then I deleted this, brought this out like this, brought this down, brought this over like this, and then I added this over here, and I'm also going to bring this down to an F sharp. And basically this is how I came up with the chord progression. And then just to make everything sound more smooth, I'm going to hold Alt R to randomize velocities with this knob, hold Alt A just to bring the velocities down, because piano VSTs basically just sound better and warmer when the velocities are lower. So I'm going to bring this down a little like this, just like this. Now we have our piano melody. It sounded very good. I know I wanted to make it sound more vintage, so I knew I already needed to add some effects. So for the effect, I started off by adding the fruity parameter EQ, just a simple EQing. I cut out some of the lows and I also boosted some of the high frequencies, and then I also added RC20, and for RC20 I used the Vanyo 3 preset, and I added some noise. I increased the follow to about 40-41%, and then I also added some wobble just to make it sound a little bit more imperfect. I added some space just to add reverb, and then after that I knew the only thing left was just to add reverb, so I added ambience. So with just these three effect plugins, you would hear how this made the whole chord progression sound a lot more vintage. So after that, I felt like I needed to add some more layers to the melody, so I went back to the album, and if you listen to A Million Blessings, you hear the kind of like melodic element of either a plucked synth or a muted guitar in the background. So in order to get that, I went to this plugin called the Print, and I went over to the pluck section. I got this pluck called Cool Stretch, and with that, this is basically what I came up with. Basically, if you listen to this, it sounds a little bit more dry and just there in the middle. So I knew I needed to add a bunch of effects just to bring it back to life. So the first thing I added is a fruity parameter EQ, just to do some simple EQing, cut down the lows and then kind of boost the highs a little. And then I went over to RC20 and I added the Pal Magic presets, and then I got rid of the noise because I do not need that. And then on top of that, I added the Valhalla Vintage Verb. I reduced the mix to about 29%, and then I brought the decay down to 2 seconds. I also added the Fruity Delay 3. I used the Ping Pong preset, and the last thing I did is to add wider. This is a stereo separation plugin just to widen the sound, and then with all that, this is what the final product sounds like. And then guys, also on me still adding some more layers to the melody, I went over to my one-shot kit, which is called Rhapsody Oneshot Kit. If you haven't gotten this one-shot kit, make sure to go check it out guys. The link is going to be in the description and also in the comments. I went over to the synth section, and then I got this synth one-shot called Passion. With that, I just made a simple but vibey synth melody. Sounds very dry and a little bit harsh, so I went over and added some effects. So the first one I started with is the Fruity Parameter EQ. I just did a little EQing just to cut out some of the lows, and then this time I actually cut out some of the highs because like I said, it was kind of harsh. And then the next thing I added is Valhalla Vintage Verb. I brought the mix down to 22%, and then I also brought the decay down to 2 seconds. And then moving on, I added Portal. This is what gave it that really warm vibey feel. And the last thing I did is to add the Fruity Delay 3. I went over, I used the Ping Pong preset, I brought the weight down to 32%, and then I set the time to 4 beats. And with all the effects, this is what it sounds like now. Now let's talk about the bass guitar melody I added. The bass is one of the most essential elements in Afrobeat production. It basically gives the track that deep, groovy foundation. And I was heavily inspired by the way Priime uses the bass in Anoti, and how P2J incorporates it into tracks like Blessed, Smile, and Pray. I'm on a long thing. You see, I know if I tell you everything I done. And what I love about those tracks is how the bass feels alive, almost like it's telling its own story. So I got this bass one shot called Dean, and then I came up with this simple but catchy bass rhythm. And basically coming up with bass melodies like this is pretty much easy. As you can see, I just followed the root notes of my melody, which is B, G sharp and A sharp. Shorten the notes, just add those really groovy feel to the melody. And what really made this easy for me to do is because I have my scale highlighted. As you can see, everything I've done is in the scale of D sharp minor. After the bass note, which is B, I went over to a D sharp, F sharp, F, D sharp and a C, just to transition from the first part to the next part, as you can see. And then one more thing you can do just to make your bass guitar sound a little bit more interesting is to pitch notes up and down octaves. As you can see over here, this is also the same thing as this one, but then I just took it up an octave. As you can see, this is an A sharp, but then if I bring it all down, it just doesn't sound that much groovy. So basically I just took this and this up an octave. and already you can hear how much vibe that adds to the bass guitar. After I got everything, it really sounded cool, but I wanted my bass guitar to have that punch, because if you listen to the songs I mentioned, you will hear how the guitar melody has a lot of presence. So I went over to the effect, and then I added this effect plugin called Decapitator, and for that I went to the preset menu, I went to guitar, and I used the beefy G2 preset. So now if you go back to A Million Blessings, you hear how there is a beautiful use of strings that creates this rich and emotional layer in the track. So for my track, I wanted to create that same feeling, so I went for a soft, sustained string sound, and instead of making it too busy, I kept the melody simple and expressive. So I went over and I opened up this plugin called the SRS Orchestral. So I went over to the preset menu, and then I got this natural violins preset. All I did is just to play a single note on my piano roll, and then this is what it sounds like. I love the way it sounds. I just needed to add some more reverb, so I went over and I got the fruity reverb too. So I went over to the preset menu, and then I used the venue preset. So now let's talk about the vocals that I added for the beat. For this part, I drew a lot of inspiration from tracks like Loose, Slow, and Piece of My Heart.
Baby girl, you know I love you though. You could tell my secrets.
So to capture the same energy, I went for something soft and melodic with a lot of reverb and subtle delay to give it that airy and atmospheric feel. I added the fruity Priime EQ, and then I basically wanted just the mid frequencies, and then to add reverb I used this ambience plugin. This is really good. I actually love using this for my vocals because it really adds that ambience reverb to the vocals. And then to add delay, I used the fruity delay 3, I used the ping pong preset, and then I brought the wet to about 24%. And then the last thing I did is to add wider. This is just widening the sound a little bit more. So with all that, this is what the vocal sounds like. And then the final thing I added before I move on to the drums is some really cool, sexy sounding, smooth, jazzy vibes saxophone melody. For me, the saxophone is one of the most expressive instruments, and it plays a significant role in creating that smooth, soulful vibe we often hear in afrobeat music. And I pretty much love how the sax was used in songs like True Love, Balance, and Essence. Lower your body. And the perfect place to find that is the Heaven's Gate Saxophone Pack Volume 2 sent to me by Veshbeat. You can go check it out, guys. Go over to his website and get this pack. So if you want to use saxophone melodies to make your beats, I'm going to also leave a link for this in my description, so go show him some love. I went over there and I got this very smooth sounding saxophone melody, and just to give it that airy, really atmospheric feeling, I added some effects. So I started with the Fruity Priime EQ. I just cut out some of the lows, and then I moved on to add some reverb. I used the Valhalla Vintage Verb, and then the last thing I did is just to add the Fruity Delay 3. So finally, let's talk about the drums. The drums are such an essential part of Afrobeat, and for this track I wanted to keep them slow and spacey to match that overall vibe, and I took a lot of inspiration from how the percussions and hi-hats are used in Loose. So for my beat, I use a similar approach, creating a percussive groove that feels light but still drives the rhythm. But before I continue with the drum section, I really just want to tell you guys about my Carnival Drum Kit Volume 1. This is a really amazing drum kit. You can go check it out, guys. I'm also going to be leaving the link for this down in the description. So I started by adding these rim shots. and then I layered that same rim shot with another. And then I also layered it with yet another rim shot, but this isn't playing the regular pattern that the other two were playing. And then I also added this bongo perk. So altogether, this is what they all sound like. But then I wanted to combine this and make this more like a perk loop, just like in the song. So basically what I did is I linked all that to the mixer, and then I added the fruity Priime EQ. I used this preset right here, and then I just basically cut out all the highs, the lows, and I kept only the mid frequencies, and then I rendered it out. So this is what it sounds like now. And then if you listen to a couple of Wizkid songs, you hear how the rim shots are sharp and minimal, and also the kicks are very spaced out, just like in Slow, Loose, or True Love. So drawing inspirations from those songs, I got this rim shot and it plays just this simple pattern. And just like from those songs that I mentioned before, you can hear how the shakers also are just basically quiet and aren't doing too much. But then I also wanted to add some more percussion. So going back to Loose, Slow, you hear how perks really play a really huge role in making the drums sound more traditional. So with that in mind, I first added a snap. And then I also added a conga. And then I added this Igbo perk just to add more groove to the drums. But then what I did for this, I went over to the note pan and then I panned it from the left to the right. And then I added a conga and a tambourine perk. And then just to seal everything off for the drums, I added a kick, and for the kick I wanted something a little bit more punchy, just like in Loose. So basically I got this really punchy kick, laid down this simple pattern, and then this is what it sounds like. Still on the song Loose, if you listen to the song, you will hear how a texture was used in the beat. This is just to, you know, fill up those empty spaces, those empty pockets in the beat. It's just there, something you would really not notice except you pay close attention to. You know, basically it's just to make it sound a little bit more vintage. You know, that's just the main aim of adding this texture. I got this texture, this is what everything sounds like together. Before I play everything for you guys to listen, I really just want to show you guys how I got inspired for the intro. Going back to listen to Loose, you'll hear how a riser kind of effect was used for the intro. So basically this really inspired me to want to do the same thing to this beat. I'm going to play the full beat for you guys to listen. Before I play it, go down to the comment section. Let me know if you think I really nailed it with this beat for Wizkid, and I'll do well to join you guys there.